Greetings, everyone. Jim Walker here. Welcome back to everyone. Uh, Not even bothering with a nice framed shot where I am in the screen. This one, I just want to talk about the drum. I've recorded a couple of videos this afternoon dealing with Ravel's Bolero, dealing with the multiple bounce roll, uh, and using this drum, which has really become my go-to orchestral snare drum, my first choice. I'd say 90% of the time it's the drum I use. And I think just interesting enough, I think there might be some interest in me having a video. So I'm focusing on the drum, not me, because you've seen me enough. You don't need to see me. This is my home-built Keller Shell, do-it-yourself uh, take on Fred Hinger Spacetone snare drum. Uh, I'll take it through its paces a little bit more. The general idea is that there are two separate sections to the shell. Hopefully in the camera angle you can see a slight gap here. Right now it's set up at about 1/8 of an inch apart, which is about 95% of the time is where I leave it. And you can open up, you can adjust the spacing between the shell sections, which will affect the sound of the drum. You could have it perfectly closed if you want to, but closed up to, practically speaking, about 1.5 inches open. I've got brackets on the inside. I suspect I will be dropping still photographs of the drum, maybe even from the assembly and construction of the drum, from the building process, drop those in um, to give a little better illustration of what's going on. But I'm mainly just going to play a little bit. For some reason, having it open just this little bit seems to improve the snare sound. Don't ask me to explain why. I do not understand the acoustic reasons why this drum does what it does. And it'll do some interesting things when I open it up a little bit more too, which some people may or may not like. I don't make much use of them, but they're there and I think they're interesting, so I'm going to include those as well. So other than that capability of the shells to be opened up or closed, this is a pretty standard snare drum. When closed, it's 6.5 inches deep, 14-inch diameter, die-cast hoops, 10 lugs on each side, 8-ply birch Keller shells, or are they maple? I'm sorry, these are maple. Because I remember I bought a shell section, a 14-inch shell tube from Anderson International Trading, who unfortunately is no longer in the musical drum shell business, last I checked. We miss you, Bonnie. We miss ordering shells from you, Bonnie. We hope you're doing well. Bonnie was the person who was the contact we all dealt with whenever we called up or emailed the company. They were so great to deal with. So I was building a drum set for a friend of mine, and Bob Kitty wanted a 14-inch floor tom, so 14 by 14. I got, I think, a 24 by 14 section, because you buy the whole thing. You can't just, from Anderson, you couldn't buy the whole, just a section of it. You had to pay for and buy the whole thing. So I had them cut a few additional sections. There's a 3-inch deep shell section that became a 3 by 14 snare drum that's downstairs. I use it for Brazilian things. But do the section. One section is 3 inches deep, bottom section 3.5 inches deep, or vice versa. Top section, I guess, is looking at the lugs, 3.5, 3, but one is deeper than the other. There was a reason for that. Don't ask me to explain why I put it on the top. Basic snare strainer. It's got the Black Swamp, Black Swamp, not Dynamic X. Those are the drum set snares. Black Swamp snares, the combination cable and wire, basic strainer on it. So just want enough talking about it. Let me play through a little bit, and I'm going to play a few things with snares on, snares off, at a variety of spacings. And just because it's set at about 1/8 of an inch apart, I'm going to start with that one. I may juggle the order in terms of how I present it, but we will start with first. First thing we'll hear is the drum opened up roughly 1/8 of an inch between the shell sections. spacing is adjusted on the original Spacetones, and they're out there, and I regret to say I've never played an original. A friend of mine has one. Dave, if you're watching this, hello. And he's repeatedly extended an invitation for me to stop by his house and check out his original, and I have no excuses. I should do it, but so I don't know if mine sounds exactly like a Hinger Spacetone. It may not. There may be some subtle differences. One construction difference, I've got the braces connecting the top and bottom sections of the shell attached inside the shell. Because I don't have the machining skills and was too cheap to go to a local machine shop and have them done. The originals, the braces were on the outside. I've got to be really careful when I set this up because I need to put some reinforcement rings in the shell. But if I'm careful, it's okay. It doesn't really warp the shells. It's 8-ply. It's a kind of thin for a snare drum shell for these kind of tensions. I just got to be really careful about seating the head and keeping the tension, bringing it up very slowly and very evenly. So I don't know how, again, if this is much of a difference between this and an actual honest-to-goodness Hinger Spacetone. But this is my drum. I'm sharing it. Here we go. So now we've got the, we will hear the drum completely closed up. And I'm sure it's not hermetically sealed. There's probably little gaps here and there, but basically closed. So now we've got it opened up about 1/2 inch. And I hope the microphones pick this up. It's been a while since I've taken it to an extreme in terms of setup. When it opens up right at the drum with the snares off, I start to hear a bit of an undertone happening. Again, the acoustics escape me. I don't know why it works this way. All I know is it does. So here we go. 1/2 inch spacing between the top and bottom sections. I would be shocked if the microphones are not picking that up. And the interesting thing, I'll keep talking, I don't know if this is going to look anything presentable, anything usable where the camera is. I'm going to open this up a little bit more. But the interesting thing about that undertone effect, and I'm going to kind of expand the range here a little bit. It really disappears when you play snares on. So what are we at here? We're at about 1, 2, 3, 4. This is an inch open. Again, I normally don't have it set up this open, but now we've got the drum set to 1 inch spacing between the shells. Again, starting snares off and then snares on. Do one more. I'll open up to kind of its maximum spacing. Apologies if you're getting a lousy camera angle here. I didn't begin this by intending to talk and show the adjustment of the spacing of the shells, but we're going to go with 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 1 1/4 inch. This is practically speaking about as wide as I can get it, just because the brackets, whether inside or outside, can really only be a certain length, because if it's inside, after a certain length, they bump into the drum heads. If it's outside, after a certain length, when you close it up, they bump into the counter hoop, or the flesh hoop specifically, on the drum heads. So this is pretty much the maximum of where I can have it. And just to talk, just in case this is actually usable, video, as I play this, I'm liking these more open spacings much more than I remember liking them before. So I don't know if this is just the drum being 6 years old now, and drums change as they age, especially wood shell drums. Or it's just the room I'm in right now. I'm not in a concert hall. I'm at home in my never-ending quest to find a space in this house that has a passable backdrop, and this is about as good as I've found so far. But just here, playing, not listening to the recording yet, but just listening acoustically as I play, I'm liking the sound of these more open spacings. So here we go, 1 1/4 inch, basically the maximum that I was able to get out of opening up this drum. So there you have it, my own humble take on the Hinger Spacetone concept. And no, I don't build professionally, I don't build to sell. So if you're looking for one of these, please feel free to take ideas from what I've done, but I don't market these. This is not a promotional video. I don't build to sell, I build for my own entertainment and occasionally for friends. I want to try one last thing before we wrap this up. I'm curious about that undertone. I've turned the snares back off. I'm going to, by hand, mute the snare side head. and see if that's producing any of this undertone. So here we go, 1.25" spacing. And again with snares. So somehow the bottom head vibrating with snares off, letting the head free to vibrate, is producing that very noticeable undertone. Um, Snares on, don't really notice it. So as we slowly crawl out of the morass of dealing with the COVID crisis situation, whatever you want to call it, orchestral gigs are starting to happen. I've got one set up later this month. Don't know if I'll need this drum, but if I need any sort of orchestral snare drum, I'm going to bring this one into the hall. I may even just get there early one day, set this up in the hall, and try some different spacings, because the orchestra's in a new hall. I haven't had a chance to use this drum since then, and try some of these larger gaps between the shells, because I wasn't crazy about it before for whatever reason. I couldn't tell you why, but now that I play it today, I'm liking them. So this is my take on the Hinger Spacetone. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.